Michael sat at the back of the lecture hall, his pen moving quickly as he scribbled notes. He had always been a serious student, the type who came early to class and left without waiting to chat. Most people didn't notice him because he preferred it that way. But Grace noticed him that day. Grace was everything Michael was not: lively, bright, and always the center of attention. She laughed loudly with her friends, but when her eyes drifted across the room, she found herself staring at Michael. Something about his focus drew her in. After class, when everyone left in groups, Grace stayed behind. She walked up to his desk with a smile. "You write like the lecturer is paying you for every word," she teased. Michael looked up, startled. "I just like keeping notes neat. It helps me remember," he replied, his voice calm. Grace pulled out a chair and sat beside him, uninvited. "You don't talk much, do you? People might think you're boring." He raised a brow, a small smile tugging at his lips. "And what do you think?" Grace leaned forward, her eyes playful. "I think you're hiding something interesting. Quiet people usually are." That was how it started, an unexpected conversation that Michael hadn't planned, and a connection Grace hadn't expected. From that day, she made it a habit to sit beside him. She asked questions, teased him about his seriousness, and sometimes dragged him to the cafeteria when she noticed he hadn't eaten. Michael found himself smiling more. Grace brought warmth into his quiet world, and though he didn't say it, he knew. Something inside him had shifted the moment she walked over to his desk. The following week, Grace didn't wait for Michael to notice her. She simply dropped her bag next to his seat. Michael raised his brow but said nothing. "You don't mind, do you?" she asked, her voice cheerful. Michael shook his head. "Not really. But don't say I didn't warn you. I don't talk much during class." Grace grinned. "That's fine. I'll do the talking." And she did. She whispered jokes during lectures, scribbled funny doodles in his notebook, and asked him random questions like, "If you could live anywhere in the world, where would it be?" Or, "Do you ever dance when nobody's watching?" At first, Michael kept his answers short. But slowly, Grace's energy pulled him out of his shell. He found himself laughing when she made faces, shaking his head at her mischief, and even sharing things he never thought he would tell anyone. One afternoon, Grace leaned over and said, "Michael, I think we should study together for the exams. You're smart, and I get distracted easily." Michael hesitated. "I usually study alone. It helps me concentrate." "Then I'll just sit quietly beside you," she said with a playful smile. And so it began. They spent hours in the library, side by side. Grace struggled at first, but Michael explained things patiently. Sometimes she would sigh dramatically, "Michael, your brain works like a computer. Mine works like an old typewriter." He chuckled softly. "Then we'll fix the typewriter." What started as study sessions turned into friendship. Grace realized she liked the way Michael listened carefully when she spoke, and Michael realized he looked forward to her company more than he wanted to admit. Something was growing between them, something neither of them could name yet. One evening after a long study session, Grace stretched and groaned. "My brain is fried. If I look at another textbook, I'll collapse." Michael closed his notebook and gave her a rare smile. "Then let's take a walk." She blinked in surprise. "You?" "Suggesting a walk. Am I dreaming?" He smirked. "Even serious people like fresh air sometimes." They strolled through the campus, the cool night breeze brushing their faces. Grace talked about her childhood, her dreams of traveling, her love for music. Michael listened, occasionally adding short comments. When they reached a quiet spot under a large oak tree, Grace tilted her head back, staring at the stars. "Do you ever wonder if life has something bigger planned for us?" Michael gazed at her, not the sky. "Maybe. Or maybe life is about what we choose." Grace turned and caught his eyes lingering on her. For a moment, Silence wrapped around them. She smiled softly, breaking the tension. Careful, Michael. If you keep looking at me like that, I might think you're falling for me. Michael chuckled, but his heart raced. He didn't answer. By mid-semester, people began to notice how inseparable they had become. Grace's friends teased her constantly. Grace, are you and Michael a thing? One asked, giggling. Grace rolled her eyes. We're just friends. He's my study partner. But deep down, she knew it was more than that. Michael, on his part, overheard two classmates whispering, I don't know what Grace sees in him. He's too quiet. It stung him. That night, when Grace asked why he was unusually silent, he finally said, People don't understand why you spend time with me. Sometimes I wonder if I'm good enough to be your friend. Grace frowned. Michael, don't listen to them. I spend time with you because I want to. You make me feel different, safe. Don't you ever doubt that. Her words warmed him. For the first time, Michael allowed himself to hope that maybe, just maybe, Grace felt the same way he did. Exams came and went, and after the last paper, the entire class gathered to celebrate. Music played, laughter filled the air, but Michael stood aside, uncomfortable with the crowd. Grace found him leaning against a wall. You're impossible, she said, dragging him to the dance floor. He resisted at first but gave in when she laughed and spun around him. Her joy was contagious, and before he knew it, he was smiling too. Later, they slipped away from the noise and sat outside. Grace looked at him seriously. Michael, can I ask you something? Anything, he replied. Do you like me? Michael's heart pounded. He hesitated, then whispered, More than you know. Grace exhaled, her lips curving into a smile. Good. Because I like you too. That night, under the stars, they shared their first kiss. It was shy, tender, and filled with promises neither of them spoke aloud. The semester ended, and everyone traveled home. For the first time in months, Michael and Grace were apart. Grace texted him constantly. I miss you. Michael replied simply, I miss you too. But behind his calm words, he struggled. His hometown was small, his family not well off, and he knew Grace came from a different world. Her father was a businessman, her mother strict about her choices. One evening, Grace called him. Michael, my parents keep asking about who I spend my time with. I told them about you. Michael tensed. And what did they say? Grace hesitated. They weren't exactly happy. But I don't care. You're important to me. Michael stared at the night sky, worry creeping into his heart. He didn't want to lose her, but he also feared what the future held. When the new semester began, Grace ran straight to Michael the moment she saw him. She threw her arms around him, ignoring the curious stares. Did you miss me? She asked, eyes sparkling. Michael smiled softly. Every day. Their bond deepened. They studied, laughed, and dreamed together. Michael opened up more, and Grace discovered his love for writing. He shared some of his poems with her, shyly. These are beautiful, she whispered, holding the pages close. You hide so much inside, Michael. And you bring it out, he replied. But in the shadows, her parents' disapproval loomed, even if Michael didn't yet know the full extent. One weekend, Grace invited Michael to her home. He dressed neatly, nervous but determined to make a good impression. Her mother barely smiled when she introduced him. Her father asked coldly, What do you do, young man? I'm still studying, sir, but I have plans. I want to build a career in finance, Michael said honestly. Her father exchanged a look with her mother. Later, when Michael left, her mother pulled Grace aside. Grace, he is not for you. He has nothing. You deserve someone established, someone from our circle. Grace's chest tightened. But I love him. Her mother's voice hardened. Love doesn't put food on the table. Think wisely, daughter. Grace cried that night, but didn't tell Michael everything. She didn't want to burden him with her family's rejection. Michael, unaware of the full conflict, continued dreaming aloud with Grace. One day, when I've saved enough, I'll start my own firm, he said. And I'll take you anywhere you want to go. Grace smiled, but her heart ached. As long as we're together, I don't care where we are. He squeezed her hand. Then that's all that matters. But deep inside, Grace worried. Was love enough to fight the walls her parents had built? During one of their late-night walks, Grace stopped suddenly. Michael, promise me something. What is it? He asked. No matter what happens, promise me you'll never stop loving me. Michael looked into her eyes, steady and certain. Grace, I will love you as long as I breathe. She smiled through tears, not telling him why she was crying. Back home, Grace's parents increased their pressure. They introduced her to Richard, the son of a wealthy family friend. He was polite, handsome, and already working in his father's company. This is the kind of man you should be with, her mother insisted. Grace shook her head. I already have someone. Her father's voice thundered. Then you are being foolish. Michael will never give you the life you deserve. Grace left the table in tears. Michael began to notice Grace's sadness. You've been quiet lately. Did I do something wrong? He asked one evening. Grace forced a smile. No, Michael. It's just family things. He reached for her hand. You can tell me anything. But she shook her head. She didn't want him to feel inadequate. Yet the silence built a quiet wall between them. One afternoon, Michael saw Grace talking to Richard outside campus. They looked serious. Jealousy surged through him, though he tried to hide it. Later, he asked gently, Who was that? Grace sighed. Someone my parents keep pushing at me. Don't worry, Michael. He means nothing. But worry lingered in Michael's heart. The pressure finally broke one evening. Grace, are you sure you want this? Michael asked. I don't want to hold you back. Grace flared. Why are you talking like this? You think I care about money, about status. I chose you, Michael. I don't want you to regret it later, he said quietly. Tears filled her eyes. The only thing I'd regret is losing you. They held each other tightly, both afraid of what the future might bring. As graduation neared, talk of the future grew louder. Their classmates discussed jobs, cities, and marriage plans. Michael received an offer in another city, a small job but a start. Grace celebrated with him, but her parents only used it as proof. See, her father scoffed. He's moving far away. How can you build a life with him? Grace clenched her fists. I'll follow him if I have to. But the thought scared her. Could she really leave her family behind? The night before Michael left for his new job, Grace came to see him. They sat under the oak tree, where everything had begun. I don't want you to go, she whispered. I have to, he replied softly. For us. For the future. She leaned on his shoulder, silent tears falling. Neither of them said it aloud, but they both feared this distance would change everything. At first, they stayed close. Michael called every evening, and Grace wrote him long emails about her days. But slowly, the calls grew shorter. Sometimes Michael worked late, sometimes Grace was exhausted after family battles. The silence between them grew heavier. One night, Grace cried after hanging up. Why does love feel so hard? She whispered to herself. Richard returned, this time with a bold step. He came to Grace's home with his parents and formally proposed. Grace was furious. I already told you, I'm with someone. Her father's voice thundered again. Enough, Grace. Michael is not an option. You will marry Richard, and that is final. Grace locked herself in her room, sobbing. She wanted to run to Michael, but he was miles away. Grace finally confessed everything to Michael over the phone. They're forcing me, Michael. I don't know how long I can resist. Michael's voice was heavy with pain. Grace, I don't want you to suffer because of me. Don't say that, she cried. I'd rather lose everything than lose you. But even as she said it, fear gripped her heart. Could she really fight everyone she loved for one man? Weeks later, Grace's parents gave her an ultimatum. Choose him, and you lose us forever. Grace felt torn apart. She loved Michael, but the thought of losing her family broke her. That night, she met Michael under the oak tree again. Her face was pale, her eyes swollen from crying. Michael, she whispered, her voice trembling. I don't know if I can do this anymore. His heart shattered, but he pulled her into his arms. Grace, no matter what happens, you'll always have my love. They held on to each other, both knowing the truth. Love was not always enough to win against the world. After their painful meeting under the oak tree, Grace and Michael spoke less often. Grace avoided his calls sometimes, afraid of the guilt that gripped her every time she heard his voice. Michael, on his part, didn't want to pressure her. One evening, Michael finally called. Grace, are you still with me? He asked softly. She broke down. Michael, I love you. But every day, my parents make me feel like I'm destroying my family. I don't know how much longer I can stand it. Michael closed his eyes. Don't cry, Grace. If letting me go will give you peace, then I'd rather lose you than watch you suffer. Her sobs echoed in his ears, but he didn't take his words back. Deep down, he knew he was already losing her. Richard was patient but persistent. He continued visiting Grace's home, helping her parents with errands, proving himself as the perfect son-in-law. Grace despised him for it, but her parents grew fonder of him. Look at how devoted he is, her mother said one evening. He will take care of you. I don't want him, Grace shouted, but her words bounced off deaf ears. When she told Michael, he only sighed. Grace, I can't compete with wealth. All I have is my love. And that's all I want, she replied fiercely. But her voice trembled. Michael threw himself into work, trying to build a future quickly. He skipped meals, worked late nights, and saved every penny. His friend noticed. Michael, you're killing yourself. What's driving you this hard? Michael gave a sad smile. Love. I want to prove I'm worthy of her. But no matter how hard he worked, the gap between him and Grace's family's expectations seemed endless. Grace sobbed. Our love is real, Michael. But sometimes love alone isn't enough. His world shattered in that moment. Despite her protests, Grace's parents announced her engagement to Richard. Invitations were sent quietly to close family and friends. Grace felt like a prisoner. That night, she sent Michael one last message. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Michael read it again and again, tears streaming down his face. He knew what it meant. He had lost her. Michael couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. He thought about crashing the engagement party, declaring his love, begging Grace to choose him. But he remembered her tears, her family's power, and his own lack of means. His friend told him, sometimes the bravest thing is letting go, Michael. Michael whispered bitterly, but it feels like dying. The weeks leading to the wedding were torture for Grace. She smiled in public, but cried in private. Her bridal dress fitting felt like a punishment. Her sister noticed. Grace, you don't look happy. Grace whispered, because I'm not. The man I love is out there, and I'm about to marry someone else. But no one stopped the wedding plans. Michael poured his heart into a long letter. He wrote about their first walk under the stars, their study sessions, the promises they made. At the end, he wrote, "If things were different, you would be my wife. But no matter where life takes us, you'll always be my first and greatest love." He folded the letter but never sent it. He couldn't burden her on the eve of her wedding. Grace walked down the aisle with tears hidden under her veil. Richard smiled proudly, unaware that her heart belonged to another man. Michael sat alone in his small apartment, staring at the ceiling, clutching the unsent letter. At the exact moment Grace said, "I do," Michael whispered. "I love you. Goodbye." Two souls broke in different places at the same time. Grace became Richard's wife. Outwardly, she lived a good life, comfort, respect, stability. But inside, she carried an emptiness that wealth couldn't fill. Michael threw himself deeper into work, climbing slowly in his career. People admired his dedication, but none saw the loneliness behind his eyes. Years later, fate played a cruel game. Michael attended a business conference, and Grace was there with her husband. Their eyes met across the hall. Time seemed to freeze. After the session, they found a quiet corner. "You look well," Michael said softly. "You too," Grace replied, her voice trembling. Neither mentioned the pain of the past, but both felt it in every heartbeat. That evening, Grace sneaked away and walked with Michael just like old times. They laughed softly about their university days, about silly jokes and study sessions. Then Grace stopped, tears in her eyes. "Michael, do you ever wonder what life would have been if I chose you?" He swallowed hard. "Every day." They held hands briefly, but both knew it was only a stolen moment. She had a family now. He had his dignity. They could never go back. Before they parted, Michael said, "Grace, you'll always be my greatest love story, even if it didn't end the way we dreamed." Grace whispered, "And you'll always be the man I never stopped loving." They hugged tightly, tears falling freely. Then they let go, because they had to. Years passed. Grace raised her children, Michael built his career, and life carried them forward. Yet in quiet moments, Grace would think of Michael under the oak tree, whispering his promises. And Michael, no matter how far he went, carried her laughter in his heart. They never married each other. They built separate lives. But their love remained, unspoken, unbroken, unforgettable. Some people marry and forget. But Michael and Grace, they loved each other deeply, endlessly, even if they could never call each other husband and wife.